Bowl champions, Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
The offseason's here. It's going to be a long offseason of kind of wondering what would have happened had Carson Wentz stayed healthy. No way around it. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan with Reuben, Frank, and Ray Didinger. I'm Dave Zangaro. Ray, welcome in. Reuben and I had a chance to talk about the hit and the injury right after the game, but this is our first chance to talk to you. Was it a dirty play, and do you get the sense the Eagles win that game if Carson stays in?
Yes and yes. I mean, it seems like the easiest of hindsights to say that now, but I definitely feel that way. I certainly think it was a dirty play. There was clear intent in what Clowney did. The idea of incidental contact, I don't buy. It was clearly helmet to helmet. It was borderline late. It's a full body weight hit on a guy that's on the ground. It was a penalty 4 different ways in my view. I'm not saying he should have been ejected. Some people are taking it there. I'm not quite there. But I definitely think he knew exactly who that was. He knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he did it. I think by any way you care to define it, I think it was a dirty hit. If Wentz doesn't get knocked out of that game, I think the Eagles do win. Because it would have been what really, McCown, and I give him tremendous credit for playing as well as he played in that game. I went back through the play-by-play. You're right, he didn't have a single 3 and out that game. He played almost the whole game and never had a single 3 and out, which you don't see that on any game in any week. I mean, almost everybody has a 3 and out. He did not. So he moved the ball. He just couldn't finish. He just couldn't finish. They had their opportunities, and it's largely because he couldn't make the plays in those confined spaces inside the red zone that Wentz can make and has been making during this run. I still don't think the Seattle defense is that good. I think that will prove itself this week. And the fact that McCown was able to move the ball as well as he did, I think, is an indication of that. They just couldn't finish. But if they had Wentz, I believe they would have. So, yeah, if Wentz played that game, I think the Eagles would have been playing this week.
I don't want to get too deep into the game itself because it's been a few days, but we haven't had a chance to talk to you. I want to ask you about the first fourth down in the fourth quarter, the 4th and 4. Down 8 at that point, still 6.5 minutes left. It was the Miles Sanders play.
Right.
He threw behind him a little. Miles said he should have caught it. Josh says he should have put it, in a better place for him to catch it and run. Would you have kicked there, or would you have gone for it? What did you think of the play call?
I think you can make the argument both ways. I think you can argue for the kick. If it were me at that moment when they were in that situation, I would have gone for it. I understood the risk. I understood you're playing with a backup quarterback. But I just look at the Seattle defense. I just don't think they're that good. And in that situation, I think the opportunity was there to make the play. The play was there. I think both guys are right in the way they describe it. Miles in saying I should have caught it, probably should have. And McCown saying I could have thrown it better, and he could have. But the opportunity was there. The play was there. And so, I mean, you could second guess it, and I guess we've second guessed everything at this point. But when we're looking at the situation, 4th and 4, field position being what it was, time on the clock being what it was, my feeling was, yeah, let's go for it right here, because I thought it was a convertible situation, and they had those 2 possessions in the fourth quarter and had opportunities on both of them. But when you look back on it, boy, that was a big play, and I feel bad because Sanders played so well. And clearly he was hurt. I mean, he was on
crutches. We saw him on crutches yesterday.
I know, and that's and I saw that on TV, and I thought, man, because he really played. He played really well.
Played gallantly.
He really did, and so I hated to see it kind of clunk off his hands at that spot because I know how he was going to feel about it. But I kind of thought in that situation was the right call.
Yeah, the way I looked at it was you have your backup quarterback. You don't know if you're going to get down there to that area of the field again. Yeah, it's easy to second guess, I guess, but no, I kind of agree with both of you guys. I would have gone for it there, and the play was there, and it's one of those things. But you're right, Ray, about just not having Wentz in the red zone killed them. You go 0 for 3 in the red zone. This is a team that in every situational aspect of the game, they've been really good this year. In third downs, red zone, and a lot of that was Carson Wentz. And when you take him out of the equation,
And 0 for 3 in the red zone, but 0 for 5 inside the 30.
yeah,
So almost reminded me of the Fog Bowl. I think in the Fog Bowl they had 11 possessions inside the Bears, 35, and did not score a touchdown. And it's frustrating. And, in retrospect, you say, well, they just kicked a field goal each time they win the game. But
Yeah.
you don't know at that point. You're going to keep getting down there. But I think I was a little hard on McCown immediately after the game, and when I watched parts of it, and he did move the team, and for a guy who hadn't played in a year, a guy who's 40 years old, he went out there and gave him a chance. But in a playoff game, I mean, it comes down to those couple plays, and the sack he took on 4th and 7 on the next drive, right after the 2-minute warning, in the 4th and 4. It wasn't a terrible pass, and Miles should have caught it, but it wasn't those two plays. Really, the game came down to those two plays.
yeah. To me, the 4th and 7 is the most
Egregious, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't take a sack. You got to at least throw the ball up in the air and hope for something. Yeah, to take a sack there, the game's over at that point.
Yeah, it would have been a great story if McCown had brought them back and won. I mean, it's the fact that it's obviously whatever game was his last game this year was going to be his last game, and you would have liked to have seen a guy that played as long in the league as he did, was around as long as he did, and kicked around as much as he did, finally gifted the opportunity to play in a playoff game. It would have been a great story if he had managed to win that game, regardless of what happened next. And I'm sort of beyond the point of rooting much. I'm just sort of watching the game because I'm watching the game. But I actually found myself rooting for the guy because it was just a great story there. Just we couldn't quite get the ending that we wanted.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if Carson would have been able to play this weekend in Green Bay.
I mean, you have a chance with a concussion to get cleared in a week, and it's hard. You're going to think about it all offseason that, if they win that game, there's a chance Carson's back the next game. Maybe Deshaun suits up. And
There's no doubt Deshaun would have suited up.
You never know, but
So instead of Carson throwing to Deshaun, we're doing a podcast.
exactly. Anything else about this game, or can we put it to bed?
I think it's time. So I'm saying
Well,
move on.
Good night, game.
Good night,
put it
game.
to bed.
Good night, Moon.
Moving on, the biggest story of the offseason, at least to start the offseason for the Eagles, in the locker room during cleanout day, Malcolm Jenkins comes out and says he will not be back on that 1-year deal that he has left, or the 1 year of that deal that he has left, which means something has to give here. Either the Eagles pay him or they move him, and it seems like he's entrenched in that belief. He's not going to play with that 1 year left. What do you guys think happens here?
Well, I think the Eagles understand his value. I think they understand he's not quite the player he was a few years ago, but he has so much value in that locker room with his leadership, and he's still a really good player, solid, smart. He's always almost always in the right place. I thought he played well over the last month. I thought he played his best football. He's never misses a practice, hasn't missed a snap in 5 years, a meaningful snap. I think he didn't play at the end of the 2017 Dallas game, played a couple snaps that game. But what he means to this team, the young guys, the way they look up to him, and just his value in so many ways. I think, this is a franchise that lost Reggie White too early, lost Brian Dawkins too early. I just don't think they're going to make that mistake again. Beyond the fact that the only other safeties on the roster, I think, are Rudy Ford and Marcus Epps, who are signed, for next year. But beyond that, I think I think they're close enough as far as what Malcolm's looking for. I think Malcolm wants to be a top 5 paid safety. Eddie Jackson just got a deal worth $14.6 million. I think, and the top 5 safeties are all in that $13.5 to $14.5 million range. I think if the Eagles offer him a 3-year deal in that, $12 million, $12.5 million
Would
range.
Would $335 get it done?
I think $335 will get it done, and I think that's what they'll end up doing. I just think they have the money. I think they understand his value. Certainly, Jeff Lurie and Malcolm. Jeff Lurie understands Malcolm's value in the community stuff. You don't sign a guy because of that, but I think it's all part of the equation of his value to this team, this franchise, in this city. And I'll be stunned if this thing doesn't get done. They have a good relationship. There's no acrimony there. I don't think Howie Roseman likes being threatened. And I think it's always a touchy situation when a guy threatens to hold out, threatens to not play, and you do give him a deal because that can lead to other players saying, "Well, I'm going to hold out now, and maybe I'll get a new deal." But I'm confident it'll get done. I'm confident Malcolm will be here.
I am too. I mean, you never quite know how these sorts of things are going to work themselves out. But I think Rube said what I was kind of thinking is I don't sense there's any hard feelings or any acrimony. I think both sides would like to get this done. I don't think anybody's holding a gun to anybody's head right now. Hope it doesn't get to that point. I don't think it's there now. Somebody was saying to me the other day about Jenkins, was saying, this team, they made a mistake. They're bringing back they got burned this year by bringing back older players and they couldn't play. And I just don't think you compare Malcolm Jenkins to Darren Sproles. I don't think you can compare him to Peters. I think he's got a lot left. The guy plays every snap on defense, plus he plays special teams. I don't see, if there's any slippage in his game, honestly, I don't see it much. And he has a tremendous quality, in addition to the leadership and the fact he's looked up to by everybody in the room, is that late in the season, when the team kicks it into the stretch, he's right there in front. I mean, he plays his best football at that time. He certainly didn't look like the clock was running down on him this season. I thought he played great. The last couple games of the regular season, and I thought he played really good. I thought he played really good against Seattle. When you see, one of the reasons this team has been able to kind of get by with, and I'll be kind here when I say this, average linebackers, is because Malcolm Jenkins is as much a linebacker as he is a safety. And there aren't many guys with his many years in the league that can do as many different things as he does. I would like to see them get another linebacker so they could actually begin to play Jenkins more as a safety. I think it would help to take away some of that downfield vulnerability that you have on the deep ball. But I mean, everything you've asked this guy to do, and I mean everything, he's given it to you. And I don't think his demands are outrageous. I mean, if he wants to be paid like a top 5 safety, I think he's earned that because I think he is.
Yeah, and I kind of respect how upfront he's been about this. He said he wasn't happy with his contract last offseason. He showed up for everything that was mandatory, and he played the whole season. Didn't miss a snap. I think he's gone about it the right way.
Had a great attitude, never complained about it, never whined.
Yeah, I mean, he's made it clear, though, that he wants a new deal. It is an interesting situation at safety right now. I thought last year was going to be the year the Eagles drafted a safety to either replace Malcolm or Rodney McLeod, and they didn't. And now they're in a situation where something has to give with Malcolm, and Rodney McLeod's about to be a free agent. They've kind of neglected the position. I mean, their only other safeties are Marcus Epps and Rudy Ford.
Marcus Epps played okay,
I guess.
But I mean, to go to say, well, we don't want Malcolm back because we got Marcus Epps. I don't see that happening.
And the one name no one ever really talks about, but I actually think it would make a lot of sense is Avonte Maddox. I liked him at safety last year, and I don't know if it would be a long-term thing because he is undersized, but I thought he played pretty well as the free safety in place of Rodney for a few games last year, and I don't know if he really has a future at corner. So I'd at least be interested if Rodney McLeod isn't back. I'd at least want to see if Avonte could play there.
Who's the last safety? The last safety the Eagles drafted in the first 3 rounds, I guess, was Jaquan Jarrett in the second round. That was 2011. That did not go well.
No, I'd say it didn't.
Before that, Nate Allen in 2010, who played a lot of years. He was okay, but Kirk Coleman, late-round pick. But
late-round pick. Yeah, who was the kid that they drafted in the Ray Rhodes year? He was Damian. Was it Damian Robinson?
Oh yeah, he was a 4th-round pick, and he went to Tampa and had a couple real good years. He had 6 interceptions one year.
Yeah, God, Ray couldn't stand him. Oh God, I mean, we wired when I was at NFL Films. We had a wire on Ray during a practice one day, and all Ray did was just rip on Damian Robinson, just ripped on him. And then when the kid came off the field, he ripped him right to his face. I said, I was going through the footage and seeing the stuff. I mean, Ray didn't spare anybody's feelings. I mean, he just told you what he was thinking, and I had a feeling that he was not going to have a long-term career in Philadelphia. And then he went elsewhere and played a little bit. He was a good player at Iowa. And the Eagles drafted him with the expectation that he'd be a good player here. But the way he played, I think he was just a little soft for Ray's liking. And Ray let him know it. But
yeah,
yeah,
he
I
was
think,
more of a finesse type guy. He went on to play 6 years, had 13 interceptions, played in 7. He was in playoffs. He was on those Jets teams that made the playoffs there.
Yes, yes, that's exactly where it went.
Yeah, but anyway, they haven't drafted safeties. And it's, I think Rodney played really well this year. I think Malcolm was his usual self, but there's a certain point where, Rodney, his contract, that's going to be an interesting one too. This will be his last big deal.
Yeah. For an undrafted guy.
Those guys are always trying to catch up to what they missed.
So you can't fault him for trying to get as much money as he can, and I don't know if the Eagles can afford to bring both of those players back.
There was a point where I thought Rasul Douglas would be a viable option at safety. I'm not sure right now he's a viable option anywhere. You guys think of him at all as being in the mix?
I don't.
Yeah, in my mind, I still think that. In my mind, I still look at him as a player, and I think he's more of a safety than he is a corner. I just don't think he has the speed or the catch-up speed or the quickness to play outside. I've always thought that he's a little bit of a liability out there in that role. And I've always thought if he can play anywhere, I think he'd be better suited to play in safety. I've always thought that. But, how many times at pressers has Jim Schwartz been asked straight up that question? Hey, do you think we have Rasul Douglas at safety? No. He's a corner. So it's – but unless Jim Schwartz actually goes to Cleveland, I think Rasul Douglas's future here is right where he is.
Jim will go to Cleveland and trade for him and make him a safety. Say, we always liked him at safety. But yeah, he's physical. He's a hell of a tackler. If he can catch you, if he can get there, he's a great tackler. He's got size.
And he has safety
he's
size.
tough.
Yeah.
He just can't run, and he seems to be getting slower. That's a problem. On paper, he should be a safety, and they have other cornerbacks. But anyway, let me digress.
What do you guys think about my Avante idea? Do you think it's too risky because of his size? That
I worry about that. He's not. He doesn't have typical safety size. I think he could do it in situations. I'm just not sure permanent full-time safety at his size is viable.
Yeah, I really like him. I didn't think he had a particularly good year. I thought he was very up and down this year, but I still think he's a good player. I don't know. I could see them entertaining the thought of trying him there because it seems to me, I've always thought because of his size, I always thought that, to me, his most natural position was slot defender. I thought he just worked well inside. I always think that he's a little bit at risk playing outside against bigger receivers because he can lose that battle. But he did play well as a safety. It may be an option because just in these last few games now, LeBlanc has played a lot in the slot, and he looks good there. So maybe you've actually found your slot guy, which would allow you to do something else with Maddox.
You might need Maddox at outside corner because, I think there's so many different moving pieces at cornerback. I think it was kind of we didn't make a big enough deal about the fact that all year Rasul Douglas was getting 50, 60 snaps a game, and Sidney started out the year getting 50. By the last game, in the Seattle game, neither one of those guys played a snap on defense. They were your second and third round picks 2 years ago, and they couldn't get on the field in a playoff game. And so when you look ahead to that cornerback position, there's so many question marks. And I like Crayvon. He had that terrible missed tackle, cost him a touchdown on third down. It was one of those plays you look back at and say, if he makes that tackle, they punt there. They're at midfield. They're not even in field goal range. Mm-hmm. They end up getting a touchdown in a game like that, a close to the vest, low-scoring game. Who knows what's different if he makes that tackle? But
Excuse me, we put that game to bed.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot. I do like Crayvon, and I like him in the slot. And, maybe Jalen and Avante and Crayvon is the cornerback setup of the
future. They
got
to find a good cornerback.
Yeah.
We're talking about these guys. They're not any good, these guys. They got to find a good cornerback.
I know.
We're talking about Rasul Douglas and Jalen Bill. They have to find a cornerback who can play.
Well, I think they're all adequate, but I think none of them has a high ceiling.
They're all number 3 corners.
Well, I think Crayvon can be. I think Crayvon can be a slot. I do. I think Crayvon can be your slot.
Yeah, I do too. I actually do. That was a bad play and cost you big time. But the week before, I think he's a good tackler. I think he's a good tackler who missed a tackle.
Yeah.
And so to just look at that and say, yeah, that's what he is. No, that isn't what he is. I think he's better than that. So, but is he a likely Pro Bowl kind of guy? Probably not. But I think he's a guy you can line up and play with. Here we are having the same discussion. We probably could have had the same time last year.
And the year before.
It's trying to evaluate what Sidney Jones is. I mean, we've certainly seen the worst of Sidney Jones, and in small doses we've seen a lot of good from Sidney Jones. Now we kind of have to decide between now and the start of next season which is which, and how far you can take this guy. Because with what you've invested in him so far, I mean, you don't want to write him off. So, I mean, if he actually has sort of unlocked whatever potential he has, and he's in a position to, take that jump that you've been waiting for, that's a big part of the equation. But there's no guarantee that he will.
I mean, he's going into year 4. I mean, I guess the first year you can't count the first year, I guess. But I mean, I thought he made some plays down the stretch that kind of opened your eyes, and then he doesn't play in the playoff game. Not one snap.
I would have played him in the playoff game.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, he'll be here just because of his contract.
I still think there's a lot of upside there, but you can't rely on it.
I agree.
You can't, go into a season expecting him to play well. At this point, you need to find guys.
How do you find them? They can't. I mean,
you got to try to draft them, try to sign one. I don't know. Find a guy.
All right. Well, I mean, we'll have time to talk about the cornerback position, but I mean, it's. I agree with you. I mean, it's really an issue because, these guys kind of have all been backups. They've all been benched. They've all had a lot of playing time, and I don't think they ever really figured anything out. We don't know anything about any of them that we didn't know 3 months ago, except now we know Rasul can't play.
And maybe there's a little glimmer of hope with Sidney.
Maybe there's some hope with Sidney. I mean, when the season started, 2 months ago, I thought Rasul was their best cornerback. Now I think he's their worst.
And honestly, it's probably not that much of a difference.
That's a good point, and I think that's the issue, is that all those guys, are just kind of what they are. They're just there. They're just guys. None of them is elite. Sidney's the only one potentially who can be elite, and we really haven't seen any sign that he will be.
Now, how telling was it in the game that we put to bed already that Sidney and Rasul, their second and third round pick from
0 snaps.
2017 don't play at all.
Sidney barely played on special teams. 4 snaps on special teams.
Yeah.
So if you're a young cornerback, a young backup cornerback, how do you not even have a major role in special teams?
Yeah, he's not really a special teamer.
Why is that? Toughness? He can run.
He can run. I don't think he's like a great tackler.
Yeah, well, that's a problem. What's he good at?
Well, theoretically covering.
Yeah.
Which would be pretty important if he's a corner, but he hasn't played a ton.
The whole again, we're way off topic here, but when you look at the secondary, there's really 0 known quantities going into next year. Mm-hmm. There's a question mark around every single guy in that secondary.
Yeah.
I think Malcolm. I'll be shocked if Malcolm's not back and playing for this team, but who knows? You got one safety's a free agent, the other safety's threatening to sit out the year. Your second and third round cornerbacks didn't play a snap in a playoff game.
Jalen Mills is a free agent.
Jalen's a free agent. Darby's a free agent. I don't think anybody wants him back at this point, although they keep bringing him back. There's a lot of question marks in that secondary.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you guys. My sense of it is I think Darby's done here. I think that they're just going to move on from him.
He better be.
And that was a big that was a big acquisition, and there was some thought that he was going to.
I didn't get it when they did it, and I don't get it now.
Well, he had in his time in Buffalo, he had looked really good. He was really good as a rookie. Honestly, he was really a good rookie, and was one of those guys that came in and said, "Wow, who is this guy?" And wow, they got a guy that's going to be a corner up there for a decade. That's how good he looked. He made all rookie legit. And then the next year, his play fell off a cliff. And then he comes here and you think, well, you're always looking back at that rookie year and what he did then and say, well, that's he can still be that guy. And then he came here and got hurt almost immediately and never really made any kind of a contribution. So
he was good down the stretch, I thought, in the Super Bowl season.
Yeah, he played. That was when he played his best football. But
a lot of guys, it kind of just timed out that way. That a lot of guys played the best football of their career down late in the 2017 season. Yeah. It's kind of freaky when you think about it. LeGarrette Blount, J.J., all these guys, just disappeared, fell off the face of the earth after that game.
Yeah, almost like Darby with him.
What's that?
Definitely put Darby with him.
Yeah. There's a bunch of guys like that. But anyway, I digress again. I tend to ramble sometimes.
No, not you. Are we moving on from the secondary?
Yeah.
Should we do that? Let's talk a little bit about the top 3 draft picks from this year finishing their rookie seasons. I guess we'll just go in order. We'll talk about Andre Dillard a little bit. Played some in this season. Started those 3 games at left tackle. I thought handled himself fairly well. Do you guys think it's as simple as he's the left tackle next year?
I do.
I do too.
I think it's time. I think they know it's time. It's tough to say goodbye to a legendary guy like Jason Peters, but they drafted Andre Dillard for a reason. I think the plan all along is probably to have him learn from JP this year. And JP's generous with his time, and you see him in training camp working with Dillard all the time and sharing whatever knowledge and technique, whatever advice he can. But I think it's time. I don't think Jason Peters played bad when he was out there this year. I think he got a little bit of a bum rap from people. Like he left some games early, but not that many this year. But
false starts accumulated.
Yeah, too many false starts. I think it's time.
Yeah, I do too. He was very open after the game. I'm sure you guys were talking to him about the fact that in his mind he wants to keep playing, and if it's not here, it's going to be elsewhere. And I'm sure he'll get that opportunity. But I'm with Rube. I think they're moving on. I don't even think they're thinking about bringing him back. I mean, the plan of succession was kind of in place when they drafted Dillard. I mean, they got a little lucky with Dillard was there for them. They traded up and they got him, and it was clearly with the idea that he was going to play left tackle because that's all he's ever been, really. And when he got the chance to play this year, I thought he did play well. I mean, to me, he looks like a guy that can play out there. I don't know, will he ever be Jason Peters? Probably not. I mean, Jason Peters is an
pretty high bar.
Is an all-timer. But listen, this guy can step in, and I think he's a smart guy. And when he had to play, obviously you don't want to play right tackle right now, but he can certainly play left tackle.
Does it bother you at all that right tackle was such a disaster for him? And I know the positions are different, but they're not that different. Shouldn't he be able to at least go out there and play competitive football?
I was disappointed because I thought he should have been able to, but I think this sort of gets back to the new school kind of coaching where you just pigeonhole a guy. He's just a left tackle. He's just a left tackle. I mean, there was a time, and talk about digressing. I guess I'm digressing back in time, but I mean,
that's what we do here.
In years when I was covering the team back in the Vermeil days, I mean, guys worked everywhere. If you were a left tackle, you also took snaps at right tackle.
Well, even like Big V. Yeah. Big V they put anywhere. Todd Harriman, Todd, go play left guard. You go do it at a high level, right tackle, whatever.
Isaac Seumalo's played right tackle at a fairly high level.
Well, but the thing is, probably those guys played right tackle somewhere. Yeah. I mean, this guy at Washington State, I mean, he never played anywhere but left tackle. So when he talked about it's like looking in a mirror and everything's reversed, it truly was because he had never seen the game from that side of the center before. So it was
like
totally.
If you asked me to sit over there, because every time we do the pod,
this is different.
I could do the pod. I think I wouldn't be quite as insightful. Don't laugh. But I could do the anyway.
But guys used to work in different spots, and with the idea that listen, next week we may need him to play there. Let's get him some work there. They just don't do that anymore, and I think part of it is that practice time is so restricted now. They just don't. They don't get you don't get as much work in camp. You don't get as much work on a practice field. You're limited in how much you can do. You're certainly limited in how much you can play in pads, practice in pads. So guys, I guess the coaches say we don't have that many opportunities. Even our practices have to be more specialized given the structure that we're working with, and I think sometimes that works against the long-term developments of your younger players.
Yeah, I when I look back at that, I didn't quite think he had the best attitude about it. I think he kind of had a defeatist attitude a little bit about it, that, it was tough, but I didn't see a lot of confidence from him that he'd be able to do it. And
there was almost a sense of entitlement from him.
Yeah,
I'm not a right tackle. Why are they asking me to do this? I remember because
I appreciate the honesty about how hard it was, but it seemed like he just wasn't confident that he was going to be able to do it, and turns out he was right.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that's mind over matter, though.
If you go in there with that attitude,
doubt.
You're not going to play well.
There's no doubt. Now you guys were talking to him. I only saw the interview on television.
He was at his locker every day that week for 45 minutes waiting for him. He finally came in that Friday. Me and EJ from the Inquirer were there like for about 3 hours at his locker, and he finally. But yeah, his. You want to see a guy say, "Hey, wherever they put me, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to battle." And he didn't have that.
No, and it seemed to me, just looking at it, it seemed to me like he was already setting up the excuse that, okay, this is not going to go well, but don't blame me.
It's fair.
You know, and right, the attitude I would have would be the attitude you would have, you just talked about, which is, hey, listen, wherever they need me to play, I'm going to line up, I'm going to play. You know, and whatever they ask me to do, I'll do. I'm going to prepare as hard as I can. I'm going to go out there and battle my butt off. The attitude that came across to me was, man, they're putting me in a really bad spot. Don't blame me if this goes poorly. That's kind of what he was trying to say, which is certainly not the attitude you would have for first-round draft choice.
Yeah. But all that said, I don't think any of us like that. I don't think it has any bearing on his future ability as a left tackle.
I don't. Maybe just a little bit, just in, his attitude. When things aren't going well, how is he going to respond?
Okay, maybe there. I mean, just from a purely physical standpoint, I think
from
he
a
has
physical
all the
standpoint,
skills
I don't worry about that. I'm a little concerned about where he's going to be mentally going through his career without JP there. Now that the job is his, if that's what happens, does he have the mental toughness? You think about the great, you think about the great offensive tackles that this team has had, and they, whether it's Lane or Trey or Runyon or JP.
Antone Davis. Oh wait, forget that.
I'm not going to put Antone quite in that class, but when you think about those guys and the mental toughness, they all had the physical skills, the attributes, the power and the size and the speed and the athleticism. But think about the mental toughness all those guys had, and I just don't know if Andre Dillard has that.
Yeah, and maybe it's something that can grow. I mean, he is still young. I don't know.
Maybe.
I think if he plays well, I think it can kind of grow confidence, and then maybe it's not as important. I don't know. I think that I tend to agree with you guys. So I think he's a starting left tackle next year, and I think he needs to be. I know they love some Jason Peters over there, but
and just from a financial standpoint,
yeah,
they have to get younger for a lot of reasons, and that's one place where it's an easy call.
Speaking of young, let me. Where do you guys see Jordan Mulata at this point? I mean, has that ship sailed now?
I don't think so. He's still there. It was kind of another lost season, but I don't think anyone really expected him to contribute this year anyway.
Well, I think Big V's gone. I'm guessing Big V is gone.
He'll probably get a contract somewhere.
I think somebody's going to sign Big V to be a starter, and I don't think I think he's fine.
Yeah, so it could set up a situation where, heck, Mulata might need to be your swing tackle next year. They did spend a good portion of time this year with him teaching him the right tackle position. So just think about how hard it was for Andre Dillard to learn right tackle. Now you're asking a guy who learned left tackle a year ago to all of a sudden switch out to the right. Maybe in some respects it's easier because he didn't have all the muscle memory. But they spent a good portion of this year before the injury in training camp and then, even
he just turned 22.
Behind the scenes,
right,
trying to teach him the right tackle. So I think they're preparing for the possibility he could be the swing tackle next year.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. And I think Big V kind of had an underrated – I mean, he's been here 4 years. He's certainly had some bad plays that stuck. I thought him and Pryor were fine the other day. I don't think they were the problem. Big V is good. If he goes somewhere and you say, look, you're our right tackle, you don't have to worry about anything else, just go play right tackle, I think he'll be fine. He's not going to be a Pro Bowler, but he'll be a functional starter, I think, in this league for a number of years.
The Eagles got quite a bit out of him for a fifth-round pick.
They did. He always had a good attitude. He'd play wherever they asked him to play.
I think the problem with Big V, at least perception-wise, is when he got beat, he got beat.
When he got beat, those plays showed up on highlight reels. Yeah. But, he's got a ring. He started on a Super Bowl team, and he'll go have a good career. But I think in Pryor they have a capable guard who I think at some point will be a tackle, be able to play tackle with his – he's certainly built like a tackle. But
that's kind of always a problem with him. They liked him at guard so much, but he's 6'9".
Yeah. It's. He's. I think he's solid. I don't know if he'll ever need to be a starter, but I think I do think Mulata does fit in their plans, and I think the plan all along for him was to just take it slow, teach, learn. He's going to go into. He's still just a kid, so I think he'll be here.
All right, let's move on to the next draft pick, Miles Sanders in the second round. Eagles nailed this one.
Yeah, they did.
They nailed it.
Star. He's going to be a flat-out star in this league, and love his attitude, love his toughness. For him to go out there first of all, on an ankle that he had sprained a week earlier that still had to be bothering him, and then he sprains his knee, his MCL, just before halftime, and he was on the last play of the first half, and plays the second half at a high level with that injury. I'm so impressed with this kid. His versatility, his attitude, his toughness, his consistency, the way he knew he had an issue with fumbles. He worked so hard with Deuce on the 4 points of contact and how to hold the ball. You never saw him hold it out like a bag of groceries, like Shady. And he produces big plays, clutch plays, creative runner.
He played the second half with an MCL sprain.
He did.
On top of his ankle sprain. I mean, the toughness he's shown now, I'm blown away by that.
Yeah.
And he played as well as he did in the second half.
Yeah.
Considering all the injuries.
He played what did he have? 14 for 69 rushing. His most yards ever by a rookie, by the way, rushing yards in an Eagles playoff game. I think he broke Correll Buckhalter's record, 55 against Tampa in 2001. But there's so much more there. And like Deuce told me the other day, I think it was after the Dallas game, this is only the tip of the iceberg with him. He said he's going to get so much better. He's never really lifted. He's never really had a whole lifting program. He said he's going to be stronger. He's going to be just a terror. I can't wait to see. And with Boston Scott in the mix too, they got two really versatile, talented, productive runners there.
Yeah, I like everything about him. I was really happy when they drafted him. I thought he was, I'm watching the board play out, and I'm thinking, boy, I hope he's there, because to me he was just a perfect fit. One of the things I really liked about him was the fact that he didn't play a whole lot at Penn State, that he only really played that last year. We see a lot of backs come out of college, and they're, and they've just been run them to death, and
the kid in Wisconsin, you wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a real Wisconsin kind of thing. A lot of guys come out of Wisconsin at great college careers, and they come to the NFL and they're pretty much on a half-empty tank. This kid came out of college with very little wear, and this year, once he kind of got a sense of what the offense was and what it took to run in pro football, and I think kind of sitting and watching Jordan Howard run the ball for half a year, with that toughness between the tackles, really helped when he got the opportunity. But he's really good. And the thing that's a little underrated about him is, and we all talk about his quickness and his ability to cut, which he certainly has, and he certainly demonstrated. But, he's really strong lower body. I mean, he breaks a lot of tackles.
Yeah.
For a guy that's not super big, he's not Derrick Henry, so he's not super big, but he's really strong in the lower body, and he breaks a lot of arm tackles, and he always is fighting forward, and he's always getting you the extra yard. And he averaged for this year, he averaged just shy about 5 yards a carry. I think he's like 4.8 or something. Even on a bad ankle on Sunday, he averaged 4.9. Yeah. And I think that's what he is. So yeah, they definitely nailed this one for sure. He's really good right now. He was really a key contributor down the stretch, and I think, like you, I think he's only going to get better.
All right, let's talk about one they didn't nail.
Do we have to?
Yeah, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. No way to
sugarcoat it.
Yeah, 10 catches for 169 yards this year.
Well, that's a hell of a game. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no.
I thought that was Metcalf's game. It was JJ's year.
Yeah, it was. And this is a team that desperately needed help at the receiver position all year, and their second-round pick didn't do anything.
No, it was a disaster. I talked to him at length yesterday, Monday, and he seemed kind of shaken by the whole experience. He talked about how he'll come back next year smarter, and he knows what it's like now and the routine. But come on, you see these other guys, and it's impossible not to compare him with guys who were on the board when they picked him, like McLaurin and Metcalf,
and Brown,
who went out and produced from the day one, and and JJ had a couple catches here and there. He made a couple tough catches down the stretch. And there were moments where you thought maybe it turned a corner, but he just couldn't keep it up. He couldn't get open. When he did get open, he dropped the ball. He didn't even play that much the other night. He played 17 snaps?
Yeah.
I think. You're the snapback. He played 12 snaps.
They had 3 practice squad guys play more than him.
Robert Davis played 48 snaps. Greg Ward played 50. Burnett played 13. They all played more. You're right. They all played more snaps than your second-round pick. And we've certainly seen guys who blossom after their first year. I mean, Mike Quick, what did he catch? 9 passes his rookie year.
Yeah.
He probably had better people ahead of him a little bit. So that was a little different. But I never try to draw any conclusions about a draft pick after his rookie year because so many of them have, just that different path and blossom in year 2 or year 3. But in JJ's case, I really, really, really worry about him because I just haven't seen any sign of him being a special player.
How did he emotionally? How did he handle it?
Not well. I mean, he seemed shaken. Like I said, he seemed. He just seemed. He kind of was just talking in a lot of different directions. He didn't really seem very clear on what he has to work on, what he has to get better at. He spoke vaguely about getting better and working harder and. Understanding what it's like and what it takes now. I don't know. I mean, he was supposed to be a guy who was able to use his frame and use his size to go up and make plays. We never saw any of that. And the catches he did have were kind of.
I didn't think they ever really put him in a position to make those kind of plays either.
Well, did you ever see him open and not get the ball?
It's not but with that, the idea is that he doesn't have to be open, right? Like that's the idea with a player with his supposed skill set is that you can kind of throw him open and he can use his body. We never saw that. We never saw him get those opportunities, and we never saw him make those plays.
Yeah. When they drafted him, and frankly, I didn't have a problem with them drafting him, and I knew the other guys were there. I knew who was on the board, and I just thought, okay, in a similar way to they drafted Dillard because he was going to be the successor to Peters. I saw this one in a similar way that, okay, they drafted this guy because he's going to take over for Jeffrey, that they saw him as a similar kind of player. Again, a big body, wide catch radius kind of guy that was going to get you the 50-50 ball and be really effective in the red zone. So I didn't really have a problem with it. I knew he didn't have the speed of McLaurin. I knew he didn't have the speed of Metcalf. But I thought, okay, I understand that this is the niche you have in mind for him. And just as a profile, as a physical profile, he seemed to fit it. I just have to wonder, to the point that we were just talking about with Reuben, how much mentally he's walking away from this saying, what the heck happened here? Because he was a really good player in college at a high level. I mean, it wasn't like he was playing at Fort Valley State. I mean, he was playing at Stanford in a very pro-style offense, which to me sort of suggested, he'll have a fairly easy transition into the NFL. And I honestly thought he would play a lot. And the fact that he hardly played at all, and when he did play, he was so unproductive. And I mean, the numbers are staring you right in the face off of this week's game. I mean, he had 169 yards receiving for the season, and Metcalf had 160 yards in the game on Sunday. So there's no way. Yeah, I mean, there's no way you can paint a happy face on this one. I mean, this was really a gut punch for a second-round pick in a year when you were dying to find a receiver anywhere that he couldn't produce as much as your practice squad guys. That's painful, and that hurts.
Remember Marquette King, the Raiders punter, a few years ago?
Mm-hmm.
He went to Fort Valley State.
Was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So did Rayfield Wright.
Really?
Back in the day. That is correct. I think he's the only Hall of Famer from Fort Valley State.
I think I was there for his induction. Nice man.
Oh, very nice guy. Great guy. And was a really good player. Obviously, he's in Canton. But, yeah, he had a couple great Super Bowl matchups with L.C. Greenwood. That was really fun watching those two guys go against each other.
Can I ask him about Kelsey, since we're talking about Rayfield Wright, Hall of Famer? Kelsey, 3-time All-Pro now. We haven't had a chance to ask you about that. 3-time Pro Bowler, starter on a Super Bowl team. How would you handicap his Hall of Fame chances?
Legit.
Legit, yeah.
Legit. I definitely think he's in the discussion because he's been everything you're hoping to get that guy at the position. He's extremely productive, durable. I mean, he had the 1 year with this torn stomach muscle where he missed part of the season, but other than that, hasn't missed a game. To me, he's very much he's very much like to me he's like a better version of Jeff Saturday. I mean, he's a similar kind of player. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but Pro Football Talk, the Mike Florio site, he did an end of the decade, all team of the decade. and he had Kelsey as the center. So, I mean, I think he's gotten that kind of national recognition.
I don't even know who would be another option for the best center of this generation. Pouncey is probably the only other guy, right?
is the other one. I think it was like 1-2.
For a while, Alex Mack was up there, but he's passed him.
Mike McGlynn had a little nice run there.
Frederick's a good player. The guy in Dallas is a good player. But you drafted him to be. He was a first-round pick. Kelsey was a sixth-round pick. But I think he's very good. Now, I don't know. I guess there'll be questions about whether he's going to come back. I mean, that's been out there now for a couple of years that he could walk away from the game at any point. I don't foresee it. I think he'll probably play another year, and there's no reason for him to walk away. I mean, he's playing at an extremely high level, and I think he still enjoys playing the game. So you talk about the great second-day draft picks in this team's history, or third day, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when we took him in the sixth round.
I think it was still two.
Was it still
2011
just 2 days?
was probably still 2 days.
Still just 2 day draft. But you talk about really great picks in that lower portion of the draft. You're going to talk about Harold Carmichael, you're going to talk about Wilbert Montgomery, but you're going to have this kind of discussion too, because he's been a rock for this team for a decade now.
And that was a hell of a draft for the Eagles. They got Danny Watkins, they got Jaquan Jarrett, they got Curtis Marsh.
He salvaged it.
Who else was? Alex Henry, Deion Lewis, who's still playing.
Yeah.
Julian Vander Velde.
Well, he does lead the team in all-time transactions.
Brian Roll, the linebacker. Yeah, you're right. 512. Yeah, I'm with you. And I wouldn't be surprised at any point if Jason retires. He's so beat down physically. I mean, he's a small guy.
I mean, he gets the heck beaten out of him every year.
Yeah.
He really does. Which makes his durability all the more impressive. I mean,
he told me, I'm sorry, he told me the other day, this job sucks, but the people I work with are the best. He said, the job, you're blocking, you're just like, the job sucks, but I love the people I work with. And
I don't think we can oversell the importance of him for Carson Wentz either.
Yeah.
It's meant a lot to Carson to have a center that's that in tune with the offense and able to kind of help him through the early years of his career. I think it's meant a lot to the quarterback to have a center who's that good and that smart.
No question. I remember as it was either his championship game presser or his Super Bowl presser, when Nick Foles up at the podium talked for 10 minutes about Jason Kelce. Mm-hmm. And the thing I remember about it was that Jason Kelce is the smartest football player I've ever been around. And I don't doubt that for a second. And it's really something. The Kelce family. I mean, you got, 2 first-team All-Pros out of those guys, and legit. I don't think there's any. I have no trouble with the vote. I think Kelce was the best center in football this year, and I think Travis Kelce is the best tight end since Gronkowski's gone. I think it's close between he and Ertz, but I would, if I had and I really like Ertz, but if I had to pick between the two, I would give Kelsey the edge too.
This holiday season and in the weeks following it, get all the tech you want with the savings you want at the Nissan year-end sales event. Get in today for big savings on Nissan's full line. Hurry, event ends soon. Really, it does end soon now. Shop ChooseNissan.com in your local Nissan store.
It's still a holiday season.
It is.
Valentine's
up until
Day,
Easter.
President's Day is coming up,
Easter's right around the corner.
Yeah.
4th of July is
always holiday
a couple
season.
days away.
I did have a chance to catch up with Malik Jackson in the locker room the other day. Interesting guy, kind of a forgotten
Got hurt
player.
so early.
First game of the season. He was supposed to be a big-time free agent pickup, and I still think he can be that. We'll have to see. He's coming off the list, Frank, so it's a serious injury, but he suffered it so early.
He looks great now.
Yeah, he suffered so early in the season. Even if he's not back for OTAs, he'll be a full go, I would think, by training camp. It's funny because we kind of forgot about him, but how much can he mean to this team if he's healthy next year?
A lot. Because he was not just another signing. He was a guy you brought in here with a real specific role and a real important role. To fill out that tackle rotation and kind of give you more than Nada and other guys have done, because you need that other guy next to Fletcher, and I think he could have been that. He's really a good player. He was certainly not an under the radar signing. They were thrilled when they got him, and they should have
a lot
been.
of money.
and they gave him a lot of money, and then he goes out before you ever really have a chance to see him and Fletcher prove what they could do. But I'm always a little worried because the Liz Frank injury, I mean, that's a tough injury to come back from, especially when you're a big man. But I'm sure they're thinking with a full season and a full off season of therapy and work that they can get him back next year. And if he comes back next year close to what he was, then that's a big addition. I mean, you put him into the middle of that defense next to Fletcher, and he can still give you what you hoped he was going to give you.
Yeah. Eventually, down the stretch, Tim Jernigan started to play well, but
Ridgway actually played pretty well
for a while
until he got hurt.
Yeah, but they went for a lot of the season with. I mean, they had to sign 2 guys off the street and play them the next week because of how bad things got at the defensive tackle.
I mean, they really had to play 3. You put Hector in that.
Hector, yeah, and even like they signed Akeem Spence. That happened this year.
That was this year.
That was this year.
That was 2012.
Yeah, It's funny though because Jackson and Cox, they got to know each other as people, but they haven't played at all next to each other. I mean, they had the one game, and you remember in training camp, Fletcher didn't practice until that first week of practices before the opener. So these guys know each other. They're friends, but they've been on the field together for like 3 practices and half a game.
I remember I did a big story on the first day they practiced together, and a couple days later the kid gets hurt.
Yeah.
How many snaps did he play? I'm going to look that up.
32.
How many?
32.
You would know that. You guys are a snap count savant. 32
what a thing to be good at.
Actually, it's 37 if you include his special team snaps. Got you.
You got me on a technicality.
Yeah. But it'll be – and I thought Fletcher didn't have his typical dominating season, and he was dominating at times. I thought the first half Sunday he was unstoppable.
Incredible.
He was really good.
But put him next to Malik Jackson.
Get him an off season too, Fletcher.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have an off season last year.
Yeah, you're right. I wonder if they'll bring – I mean, Ridgway is a free agent as well.
I think Jernigan's a possibility to come back on a cheap deal.
They're all free agents. Those 2. So I think you need one of them back for the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, coming into the season, they were supposed to have 4. I mean, that would – if all those guys were able to stay healthy, that would have been a pretty formidable defensive tackle rotation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think – I guess Jernigan's more likely to bring him back than Ridgway. You could probably tell Tim, hey, we're going to give you 1.8. Okay. He doesn't care.
So you had a chance to talk to Nelson Agholor.
Yeah.
Probably the last time you'll ever talk to Nelson Agholor.
No, I'll keep in touch with him.
You and Nelly hang out?
Yeah. Nelly's such an interesting guy, and
what a weird career.
What a strange career. I was going to ask Ray if there's any parallel. Here's a guy, and I actually watched the 4th quarter of the Super Bowl the other day just to see the Eagles had a 2nd and 9 near midfield on that last drive, or the go-ahead drive, the Ertz touchdown. They had a 2nd and 9, and the next 3 plays were 10 yards to Agholor first down, 14 yards to Agholor first down, 10 more yards to Nelly for another first down. 3 straight snaps, 3 straight catches. Got open, he looked confident, caught the ball, got a couple yards after the catch, moved the chains. And those 3 plays got you down inside the 30. And a couple plays later, Ertz basically scores the game. This is a game-winning drive in the 4th quarter of a Super Bowl, and Nelson stepped to the plate and caught those passes. And he looks like a different guy when you watch that. And I wanted to watch it just to kind of remember the player he was. And he was he never had a great season. I don't think he ever even had more than 800 yards. But in that game, with the whole world watching, he was money. He caught 9 for 84 in that game. Mm-hmm. And then you watch him this year, and it's a different guy. And he talked about that. He said, I've seen the highest highs and the lowest lows in my years here. It was a tremendous growth opportunity. I look at the highs as moments to celebrate, and the lows as growth opportunities. And I got to admire. And then he went around and hugged every beat writer and thanked them. These are guys who were really hard on him. I was really hard on him. And he thanked everybody. He went around and thanked every beat guy, gave us a hug. And, this is a different kind of cat. And I think he'll go somewhere to a small market and catch, 45 balls next year, 50 balls, and have a couple, for 650 yards. And because he's got talent. I think he just is the ultimate guy that needs a new start. And I think he understands that. Obviously, the Eagles understand that. I think that contract, I don't know whether the pressure got to him of living up to $9.4 million, being a first-round pick, having the Super. I don't know what it was, but he was obviously lost this year. He was also hurt, and he talked about that. He might need surgery on that knee, on that right knee. But I'll remember he is one of the more just bizarre first-round players in Eagles history. I can't think of somebody who's had the highs that he had and the lows.
Good point. I mean, that's sort of how I feel. I mean, I was a big fan of his when they drafted him. I saw him play a ton of football at Southern Cal, and he wasn't just a good player. He was a really good player in college. I know they don't play much defense in the Pac-12. I understand that. But every game that they played, I mean, the other team built their whole defense around trying to stop him. They always put their best guy on him. They always had somebody over the top, and they couldn't stop him. And so when the Eagles drafted him 20th overall, I thought, that's a good pick. I mean, he can come in here and, I didn't say – I wasn't thinking in terms of slot or outside or X or Z. I just thought this guy could play. And he was also a really good return man in college. I mean, there really wasn't anything that they asked him to do at Southern Cal that he couldn't do. So I thought that the ceiling on him was even higher than what his college career would suggest. And then he came in here and he had the two really, really disappointing years. And then comes year 3, and he really steps up and plays well all season. And then you get into the postseason, and he plays even better. And if you're going to look back on his career and you're going to say, well, the highlight of his career was a Super Bowl, if you're going to have a highlight, that's a good place to have a highlight. And I really thought that was kind of the breakthrough. I really kind of thought that year, okay, all the other stuff's behind him. I always thought it was a bit of a confidence issue with him, feeling confident in himself, his ability to compete in the NFL. And he certainly proved that in the year 3, 2017. So I figured, okay, now he's just going to go on from here, and he's just going to build on this. And last year was a step back, and then this year was the bottom fell out completely. And I agree with you 100%. I mean, he needs to go somewhere else. He needs to get a fresh start. And the talent is still there to be a good player. I don't know that he'll ever be a great player, but you know what? He was a great player on a great day. If it was only going to be about one day, he picked the right day.
That's true. His career here was like a perfect bell curve. It started off so low, peaked in the middle, and then bottomed out this year.
The Nelly curve. We're going to change the name.
Nelly curve. Yeah, I like
curve's
that.
Now the Nelly curve.
It really is strange. He did play out of position this year. I don't think the injuries to Deshaun and Alshon affected anyone more than Nelson.
Yeah.
But, he should be able to play outside.
Because if he's playing inside and you have Alshon and Deshaun outside making plays, all of a sudden there's no pressure on him. You just go out there on third down and be kind of like a Jason Avant type guy. But he's certainly not a number one. Yeah. And again, this is a first round pick. It was a chip guy, but it goes into their certainly their recent issues in the draft. I mean, you pick a wide receiver in the first round of 2015. You expect to have him for more than 5 years.
All right, that's it on Nelly. We have one more thing to get to. Jim Schwartz, one of about 1,000 interview candidates for the Cleveland Browns job. By the way, Joe Judge, now the new head coach for the New York Giants. That just happened. So Joe Judge in New York, Matt Rule to Carolina, maybe Jim Schwartz to Cleveland. I don't think any of us are buying that happens. But I think when we first heard that Jim Schwartz was a candidate, I heard a lot of fans say, take him. But look at the numbers. I mean,
number 7 defense in the NFL since he got here in 2016, with really 2 above-average players in Fletcher and Malcolm, and speaks volumes. I don't know why fans don't like this guy. Maybe he doesn't blitz enough. I don't know.
I think it's a style of play.
But I think you have to understand that he's coaching with the personnel he has, and when you don't have elite cornerbacks, I'm not sure blitzing all the time. You want to be Jim Johnson out there. So I think he's. I mean, gosh, this year, 8 of the last 10 games, they allowed 17 or fewer points. They've allowed, I think it's like 15.5 points in the 6 playoff games that he's coached, and the New England game brings that up a little bit. But
it's only 17 with that Super Bowl.
Yeah,
average.
He's a hell of a coach, and I don't know why people don't understand that.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a good coach, and I'm always getting in arguments with people about that because you're right. People, the average the average fan, they're really down on the guy. And I think part of it is just Eagles fans, they love the Buddy Ryan school of defense. They love the Jim
that went
Johnson
really well.
school of defense.
He had 30 All-Pros and didn't win anything.
Well, I mean, but they like the idea that a lot of these fans are still living in the days of the body bag game, and that's kind of what the kind of defense that they like. They like the super aggressiveness. And listen, my post-game show colleague Seth Joyner, I mean, he echoes that all the time. I mean, he wants some blitzing all the time, and I think you coach. I think you coach to your players what you have to play with. And Jim Johnson blitzed a ton because he had Bobby Taylor and he had, and Troy Vincent and he had Brian Dawkins, and he had a secondary he could count on.
And then he had Sheldon and Lito.
Yeah, and those guys. So I mean, he could really run a lot of blitzes because he felt good with the one-on-one coverage. I think if you handed Jim Johnson this secondary, I don't know how much he would have blitzed because he would have been smart enough to know I can't do it or else I'm going to get lit up every week. So I thought that Jim did a very good job of assessing what he had and making the best of it. And if you look at the end of the day, you look at the numbers where they ranked in terms of third down defense, points allowed, all those areas. He built up the run defense. I thought that week in and week out. Look, the Miami game was awful, but those are going to happen. But I thought that he's a really good coach. Look, to me, it would be a surprise if Cleveland took him because I don't even know if it would be the best thing for him. That situation. That's like you're stepping into quicksand if you go there. To me, there's nothing good that can come out of going to Cleveland. But
they got a good art museum in Cleveland.
Yeah, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a great place, and you're right down the road from Canton. I mean, there's a lot to recommend it, except unless you have to coach the football team while you're there. But I think that Schwartz is a really good coach. I think it's kind of a long shot that he's going to get the job, and I kind of think that I would like to see him come back because I think as a defensive coordinator, I think he's one of the better ones in the league. I really do.
Yeah, and I don't think that there's an upgrade. I mean, maybe there is somewhere, but to count on an upgrade, I wouldn't count on that. The grass isn't always greener.
I don't think there's anybody on the staff.
Probably not.
Which I think I think there always should be an heir apparent.
Who would it be on the staff?
If it's anybody,
be Unlin.
Probably Unlin,
who people aren't very happy with either. But I mean, he hasn't had much to work with.
No, Ryan Paganetti.
I don't think so.
Dino Vasso. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's no. And one thing about Andy Reid, there was always that heir apparent on both
Matt
sides
Burke?
of the ball. I doubt it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would probably have to be somebody from outside. I know people were asking about Wade Phillips, who was Buddy's D coordinator from 86 to 89, but you're not going to run a 3-4. Yeah. Has Wade ever run a 4-3?
No, I mean, his 3-4 is kind of a hybrid at times, but it's not. They want a 4-3 here.
Yeah.
And they have the players to run a 4-3.
Right.
So.
Jeff Fisher?
Oh, God.
Available.
Jeff Fisher, who succeeded Wade as defensive coordinator here when Wade went to Denver.
Has Wade coached in
everywhere,
every city at this point? Just about.
Jeff Fisher, God. Yeah. Hey, it's a good name. How long has he been out of coaching?
2 years, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so unless you want Jeff Fisher, just suck it up and deal with Jim Schwartz.
Yeah. You think you don't like Jim Schwartz. Wait to see Jeff Fisher. What else you got?
I think that's it.
I think we'll wrap it up. People's time enough.
Yeah. Thanks, Ray, for joining us.
My pleasure,
We'll be back later in the week. We're supposed to hear from Doug Peterson and maybe Howie Roseman, so we'll break all that down on the next Eagle Eye podcast.
And by the way, can I just interject? We're going to be keeping this thing going through the off season. So if you like what you hear, we're not going away just because the season's over.
Presented by Nissan. We will catch you next time.